I've been scarred and I've been bruised. I have learned just what to do. I need to leave my past behind me. I need to look to the future. No matter what will come, no matter what I've done, I know just what to do. And that's all because of you.
Hello, you okay, family? Welcome back to my YouTube channel, guys. Welcome. The week is so long when I have to wait to do this again. Welcome. I really, truly look forward to actually engaging with you on Tuesday. You're part and parcel of my Tuesday routine, and I think it's fair for me to verbally express how I enjoy your company and how I enjoy your engagement. Reciprocal affection is such a lovely thing to do. It's encouraging for me to keep doing what I'm doing because you receive it so warmly. You haven't tired of receiving me well with the same zeal and enthusiasm. Therefore, I'm also not tired of delivering this to you at the same zeal and the same enthusiasm. So I hope my respect and adoration for you is reflected in how I prepare for you, in how I am consistent in delivering this on time and setting a precedence that I can always maintain for you. Tingo's not here, so we're not talking about difficult things. We're talking about growth things, developmental things. The channel isn't just purely mental health. It's also personal development that I believe will have consequence that is beneficial for your overall functioning. And today we're doing a little bit of those developmental topics. I don't even know what we're going to call it when we are done, but I'm pretty sure by the time you guys watch this, the topic will be on the screen. And I want to speak to a principle of recognizing something that was an original consequence and getting to understand when the consequence no longer applies, or when you are actually at a place where you can survive that consequence now. Have you ever heard that saying that is so cliche, that says what you had to do to survive is going to be different from what you need to do in order to thrive? Yes, something along those lines. I don't know who the original author for that statement is, but it's a very well-known statement that what you cultivated during survival time isn't the same quality you're going to use when it's time to thrive. We've spoken briefly about this in our very early days for the regular day ones when we did the What's Childhood Gotta Do with It video, but the take I want to have on it is understanding why the feelings that come with this are so primal and why they're so fundamental. I know when we see someone's reaction in something that seems so obvious or so manageable for an adult, match by reaction yakhe kutheni lela hlobo, and we forget that sometimes feeling accompany the original conclusion or the original consequence, that the first time they experienced that thing, automatically this is the feeling that came with it. So when someone does that in the future, immediately it's accompanied with the same affective response from their side, even if the circumstances are no longer the same. I'll take a random example, like assertiveness, people that battle to stand up for themselves or battle to use their own voice. The rush of warmth that comes to their cheeks, and they start stuttering and and defend, may not be understandable to someone whose assertion is not a difficult thing. But when you look back to someone where standing up for themselves was not an option previously, the feeling is as primal as the original time that they experienced it. And most of the time, the original time was in childhood. And your options in childhood are just severely limited. Stand up for yourself, and then when there's punishment, do what? When there's kicking out, do what? When there's rejection and abandonment, do what? Survival is dependent on it. So I need you to start saying that statement to yourself. Yes, the feeling will come. It will take a great deal of training for you to completely divorce the feeling. But I need us to start using the language that even if it does happen, I can actually survive the consequence now. I'm giving you guys permission to grow up and permission to update the child in you, that you're not a child anymore. So even if the worst case scenario you are imagining actually does go ahead and happen. Because sometimes I think people resist psychotherapeutic interventions because it's like, yeah, but what if it does happen? Because my parents haven't changed, my system hasn't changed, but you have. You've grown. So if they do leave, because people will do this in romantic relationships, for instance, where I will not do something that will threaten how intact we are, because if you leave, if you leave, held a much more severe consequence like homelessness. Yes, you're right, maybe they would leave. But if they do, this is something you actually can survive. I need us to start practicing the so what language. So what if that happens? What do you think will actually happen? You know, I regularly make a joke with my therapist with how much I over-prepare and how she always cautions me against over-preparing. And obviously, for my kind of script and my kind of history, knowing as much as I can about something was my protective factor, because there wasn't much else. There wasn't much else in terms of certainty that the environment could offer me. So me being certain of what I can be certain of is something that I do very, very well. As a result, in my growing up, being found unprepared was the worst pain you could possibly imagine if I didn't see something coming. The update that I'm trying to give you guys, and the update that helped me profusely, I'll never stop over preparing. So this is not a quality I'm prepared to discard. But if stuff does find me unprepared, it was a useful turnaround in my mind to understand that should stuff find me unprepared, nothing is actually going to happen to me. And understanding that the original consequence of being unprepared wasn't pleasant, wasn't something that I could survive, wasn't a chance I could gamble with. As a result, I was always prepared. It makes you more innovative when you realize that although it's a beautiful quality and one that you rely on the most, it doesn't have to be your only one. This is a problem for professionals that can't speak up in boardrooms. This is a problem for people that have to pretend they don't have needs, because standing up and declaring what you need is a problem. This is a problem for avoiding people where pretend I don't feel, pretend I'm not affected, was how they used to deal, because taking the pain at that time was just too much for their little mind. Acknowledging and holding people accountable was just a consequence that they couldn't afford. This is inspired by a conversation I had with a friend of mine, Unandi Magida, where we spoke about this and constantly went back to the fact that, do you realize that you can afford this now? You can actually afford to go ahead and do the brave thing. You can afford to do the difficult thing. But most importantly, matching to the original consequence. That yes, my people pleasing comes from people had to be pleased with me in order for them to love me. I couldn't afford people being upset with me. That's not a luxury that I used to have. So yes, this terror that I feel when I'm about to let someone down, this apprehension and anxiety when I'm about to say no and disappoint someone, is as threatening as I remember how it used to feel when someone wasn't pleased with me. You'll see that this accompanies foster children a lot, people that are raised by non-biological parents a lot, where it just feels like I couldn't afford to test the boundary. I just didn't have that luxury, and how scared I am, even now as a grown-up, is so fundamental. This also matches to when you relate to people who have these injuries. Why the response just seems so severe for what you did. It's not what you did. It's what it triggers. It's what it represents for them. It's the interpretation they're making from that kind of behavior and taking them back to the first time they experienced that feeling. But get other people aside. This is a one-on-one conversation between me and you. The consequence is no longer as dire. Go ahead and do it. Go ahead and test it out. Go ahead and try the thing. Give yourself the chance. Give the relationship a chance. Give the job a chance. Give the art a chance. What happens when I'm humiliated? What happens when you're humiliated? Go ahead. Finish the sentence. What happens? I know people that were bullied. Being embarrassed is not a pleasant emotion they want to revisit. But update the adult in you. If you visit it, then kuzothini. And you realize that the little person in you that is still fragile, you're not fragile anymore. I know when you grow up in a system and you are being raised, there's a lot of cautionary messages. Don't do that. Stop talking. Do this. Messages are instructional. And I'd like to re-instruct you. You're allowed to grow up. Children grow up when they receive what they need. Start giving yourself what you need so you can grow up. And we can stop having childlike fear. Fear is one of the most fundamental emotions that drive humans. If you talk to people and unpack, this is what we do in therapy as well. A lot of feelings are very rackety and superficial. One of the most primal feelings that you need to address is that I'm scared. And scared speaks to being outmatched. That myself compared to the thing I'm scared of, I feel like I'm at its mercy. It's larger than me, be it circumstance, be it a thing, whatever. But we get scared when we feel like compared to the thing we need to face, we are smaller, we are under-resourced. And that speaks to childlikeness. Most things are bigger than you when you are a child. So someone raising their voice at you induces a certain terror. But someone raising their voice at you, what are they going to do? Test it out. Give yourself an opportunity to cultivate secondary strategies. I'm not asking for an identity change. You're probably too old now to change that thing. I'm saying understand the trigger and ask, so what? So what if it does happen? So what if I experience that? And that courage will tell you nothing is going to happen. Nothing that is life-threatening to someone that is an adult. So in your script analysis, or life narrative, whatever school of thought from psychology you come from, this is a very important update. Drivers and injunctions are a big thing in psychology. What is driving your behavior? And I'm scared is a powerful message. But who's scared? You or the little person in you? And what do you think is going to happen? And I'm encouraging you, saying that if it does happen, you'll likely be fine. You'll likely be fine. And if you don't believe me, then test it out. It was a useful strategy for them. But you've got to get to a place of bidding your defenses farewell when they've served their purpose. And in a good way. I think people judge defense mechanisms so much as a result, to get defenses like they become defensive. And they anti-code defensive. But defenses are never a bad thing. They are useful strategies to block pain when there's a need to block pain. They are useful strategies to protect your fragility against something that your mind knows you won't survive. But there comes a time where you replace them with better and more efficient strategies. And you can't do that if you don't trace back to the original purpose. So yes, I'm recruiting you to my team. If I die, I die. The consequences aren't as bad. Believe you me, when I'm unprepared, I still feel the same terror. But now, the time I spend in it is so short-lived. So short-lived. Because immediately when the terror arises, I'm updating the message that even if I'm unprepared, one, I'm older. Two, I've built intrinsic strategies to create a new way. If it so happens that I was unprepared and a disastrous things happen, I'm smart enough, I've grown my aptitude, I'm educated enough, or I have enough of a social network that is supportive. So my consequences are not as bad. So I know why I'm scared, but I also know that the consequences now aren't as bad. And that makes me try it. That makes me give my life things more chances. You have no idea how I would keep dreams and stuff locked inside until I feel prepared enough. It makes me a better person to have that and other qualities at the same time. So invest in being better, in being diverse, in growing up, in updating, and not relying solely on the thing you originally developed for another purpose anyway. So yes, I don't know what we're going to title the video, but if there's one thing that you need to remember that I said is that the consequence isn't as bad. And like I said to Nandi, and Nandi said to me, I can actually afford it now. I can afford that now. I can afford to not pretend I wasn't hurt by that. I can tell you when you hurt me. Because if you do abandon me, I'll actually be fine. I can now own that I was hurt by that. I don't have to pretend I don't feel pain. Because actually I'm old enough to make it out of a painful episode should it be heartbreaking. I'm old enough to be underprepared. I can actually afford that now. So yes, you can afford now. So go ahead and do it, whatever it is for you. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.